So I'd like to just mention a few things about this fluoride, and these are not my opinions, these are modern researched facts. The first one, most important one, is that it's accepted on both sides of this argument that there is no benefit from swallowing fluoride. Swallowing fluoride does not make your teeth more resistant to decay. This was established as a fact in 1990 in the University of California, UCLA, and is accepted, as I say, by both sides of this argument. No benefit from swallowing it. If you look at the statistics gathered by the Department of Health from the school dental services, since 2002 through till now, in 5-year-old children in fluoridated communities, there has been no reduction in dental decay. If you have a graph, the line of the graph is flat. It doesn't trend downwards, it's flat. The same line occurs for unfluoridated 5-year-olds. There is no difference between unfluoridated and fluoridated 5-year-old decay rates. That's the government's own statistics. In the last 5 years, something like half a dozen major research programs have been concluded, which all reach the same conclusion, and that is that if you bring your child up pregnant in a fluoridated community and bring your child up in a fluoridated community, by the time that child is 5 years old, they will be suffering up to 5 or more IQ point deficit. In other words, there is brain damage to children growing up in a fluoridated area. This is not my opinion, this is research fact. Harvard University, Journal of the American Medical Association, Lancet magazine in England, the most reputable research bodies in the world come to the same conclusion. The decision to fluoridate, which has been made this year, was, instead of being a council community democratic process, firstly was given to the district health boards, which have themselves been disestablished as the new changes take place, so that the decision to fluoridate nationally was made by one person, an unelected bureaucrat down in Wellington. I fail to see that that represents a fair process for, in this whole situation. We also have an environmental issue. If we fluoridate here in Whangarei City, I figure out that something like 100, 200 litre barrels of Category 8 poisonous industrial waste will be tipped into our water supply every year. Now, less than 1% of the water that's reticulated is actually drunk. So this is an extreme version of a blunt instrument of health policy. 99% of that water will actually go into our environment, where it's a toxic bioaccumulator, it doesn't break down, it's poisonous to all living things, and we're being told we have to do this. In Scotland, which is not fluoridated, they have a program called Child Smile, and that is based on educating children at school, giving them toothbrushing lessons during the morning break, and counselling parents and the children themselves on proper diet and respect for your health. Interestingly enough, when I was practising in dentistry some years ago, one of my staff became a school dental nurse and went to work up in Maramaku, and she instituted a program like that, and we supplied toothpaste and toothbrushes and stuff like that, and within 6 months she reported a significant decrease in the decay in the children she was treating. This is the way to solve the problem of dental decay. It's education, not fluoridation. Interestingly too, also, that program was stopped by order of if we don't speak up and we don't do something about it, well, then nothing's going to happen, is it? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Laurie. Just stay there for 2 seconds. We've actually got some councillors which have got a question for you.
Yep.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie. I know you've been fighting this fight a long time. I remember getting a book from you a few years ago on the same topic. I like to look for solutions. You're aware what this council, what position this council is in. What do you think the solution is for us?
That's a very difficult situation that the council finds itself in, because if you renege on the implementation of the process, you face a $200,000 fine plus a $10,000 daily fine every day that the situation's not remedied. What can you do about it? I think the only real possible solution is to strike up a liaison with other councils who face them, well, all councils are faced with the same problem, and lobby the central government as a group of councils to say that this is just not fair to our constituents. I don't see any other alternative, really.
Thank you.
Councillor Golightly.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Someone mentioned injunction, and that's a possibility. There's a court hearing in Wellington at the moment which is investigating the legality of this process, and you can apply for a temporary injunction to put off the fluoridation program until that court resolution is made. And that's another prospect, but one of my friends here will talk a bit further about that.
Councillor Golightly.
I'm on already, thank you. I've got a question, but first I just want to thank you, Laurie, for coming in, and everybody here. As an ex-dental nurse, I agree with you and understand the complications of what we're sort of having to do. So, but I was always told that fluoride only works on teeth that are forming, not on the teeth that have erupted. Is that?
Yes, well,
can you explain it?
The research carried out at UCLA, as I mentioned, addresses this, and what they realised was that at 1 part per million, the amount of the active fluoride that was actually being absorbed into the growing enamel of the teeth was so minute that it had no actual effective chemistry on strengthening the enamel. The theory briefly was that the fluoride replaced the more soluble elements of the tooth enamel, which sort of gave them an armour plating type quality, but that has been found not to be the case. The dose is too small to have an impact. Interestingly enough, if you increase the dosage of the fluoride, it may have some effect, but in fact it weakens the teeth because the fluoride actually substitutes for calcium and removes calcium from the enamel. And when you see that white fleck on a person's teeth, that's fluorosis, the poisoning. And when you look at an electron microscope photo of that enamel, it's like a bomb's gone off in the enamel. Far from being beautiful rows of prismatic, beautiful enamel, it's just scattered and lost its uniform structure. Interestingly, you'd say, well, why don't we increase the dose, say, to 2 parts per million? But at 2 parts per million, it's acknowledged by all parties that that's actually a poisonous dose. So the difference between 2 parts per million and 1 part per million is supposedly benefit and definitely poisoning. So how you monitor that as a dose, I think, is really very difficult.
Can I just respond to that?
No, you can only ask questions.
Okay, I've got one more question. Thank you. Do you agree with fluoride tablets?
Oh no, fluoride tablets have been debunked since the 1970s for that same reason. In fact, it's now accepted that if you take a a fluoride tablet when you're pregnant, you are damaging your growing baby in your womb. But there's still hardcore old head in the Sanders who still would say take fluoride tablets, but it's the same logic that consuming the fluoride has no benefit to your developing teeth. This is fact. So why would you drink it? You know?
Councillor Olsen, you've got a question as well?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Thank you, Laurie, for your presentation. Just one question. We've discussed ingesting it, we've discussed tablets. What about topical application of fluoride?
Okay, so topical applications of fluoride will be effective on the flat surfaces of your teeth, not in the pits and fissures on the biting surfaces, which is where the vast majority of decay occurs. If you're getting decay on the flat surfaces of your teeth, you've got a major dietary or structural problem. But if you actually dab concentrated fluoride onto a decaying flat surface and leave it there for a couple of minutes and wash it off, yes, that will toughen up enamel. But the control is the problem. If you're doing that in a 5-year-old kid, he's got a tongue that's going sideways and his head's not keeping still, the risk is that they will swallow that fluoride, and that concentration of something like 1,500 parts per million, same as toothpaste, that is an immediate acute toxic dose, and there's no argument about that either. Okay. That's recognised.
And I have one more question. Do you believe in the studies that have proved that fluoride affects TSH and T3 and for those that don't know?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, you can't hear me?
No.
The thyroid studies, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and T3.
Yep.
Do you believe in the studies that have proven that it affects that?
Well, I think the chemistry is clear that iodine, which is the essential component of thyroid function, is the same chemical family as fluorine, but fluorine is much more reactive and competes successfully for the uptake of iodine into the gland. And they did a study in England where they just got every medical practice in England, fluoridated or unfluoridated, to send their statistics for hypothyroidism, and there was a 30% higher incidence of hypothyroidism in fluoridated communities. And what are the symptoms of hypothyroidism? Lethargy, depression, obesity. And are we not dealing with an epidemic in the Western world of those exact three problems, you know? Interestingly, if you've got depression, what they will give you is a medication containing fluoride. So how do you make sense of that?
Thank you, Dr. Laurie. Brett, appreciate you coming in, spending the time to explain these things. It's vitally important, I think, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Deb Fong. Again, Deb, as I said before, you've got 5 minutes. And councillors, I just remind you, we do have a very long agenda here, so I want to make sure that the public actually get their fair share. Deb, would you like to speak?
Microphones don't seem to be working. We can hardly hear any questions.
I appreciate that from the comments of the public. When you speak into the microphones, please speak into the microphones, and that's probably the issue is there, okay?
My apologies this morning. I did have a visual presentation as well that I will forward on to you as we've got technical difficulties, obviously. The first quote that I... Is that clearer? Lovely. Okay. So I did have a presentation today and I did have some key quotes that weren't mine that I wanted to share with you. I will send you an email of that presentation so that you have that in future. The first one, because I want to speak about the costs of adding fluoride to our water, is that we sweat and cry salt water. So we know that the ocean is really in our blood and water is vital. Mayor, councillors, Simon, some of the councillors I've had the privilege of meeting at the recent citizenship ceremony. I'm not sure if Andrew Venmore is here, and otherwise if he might be listening to this afterwards. Laurie Brett and Mia, who are also speaking on fluoride today, and the support of our wider community. My name is Deb Fong. I'm originally from the Bay of Plenty. I moved to Ruakaka-Bream Bay in 2005, and since that time have made Te Tai Tokoro my home and moved into Morningside in 2018. So I'm responsible for 3 homes in the Whangarei District Council area and for 3 families who are all on town supply water. So if I can have a show of hands, who else is also dependent on town supply water?
I'm sorry, this is not, you need to just do your presentations. I'm sorry,
Okay.
we need to keep to this.
I work part-time and I also volunteer part-time, and the objective of my presentation is to understand how I can best support the Whangarei District Council to support the community to remain unfluoridated. So as an adult, I'm not in the target audience for the addition of fluoride, and I don't wish to be medicated against my will. As a mother who does not choose to have it added to the water, when you treat topically, you can use toothpaste, or as Laurie mentioned, with fluoride from the dentist or with tablets. I stand against it as a landlord responsible to tenants and as a member of this community who's concerned about the harms to everyone. So 3 key costs that I see to this community are our health, safety and well-being, the financial costs to us all, and also the governance overreach. So I'm not going to go into the details of fluoride. I'm not an expert in that area. There's excellent websites available for that. It has been compared to the toxicity of lead, mercury and asbestos, which we take great care over these days. And there is current research being done in the US. I'm concerned about the decrease in IQ, the calcification and osteoarthritis, which of course I'm coming into the age group to be concerned about, and fluorosis. For me, water is the most important thing after air. I will die within minutes if I don't have oxygen, but I will die within days if I don't have water. I've had asthma and allergies all my life. My daughter does also. She's a vegan and she's suffered trauma and mental health challenges. I also have an elderly dog that I'm responsible, and I take personal responsibility for managing my own well-being. I've invested over $4,000 in a water machine, a Kangen system, that takes the chlorine that's in the water out and any other nasties, but not fluoride. So I would need to install a fluoride filter in order to take the fluoride out of my water at great cost. I also have a system that filters the chlorine out for the water that I bathe in. I'm concerned about the costs, both for plant modification and maintenance, and the ongoing costs for a toxin. I'm aware of the injunction, and I'm aware that it could possibly be a double-edged sword in terms of, if the injunction was not successful, that cost comes back to us. My biggest concern is governance overreach. We had the referendum. I obviously can't ask you where you would sit if you were voting in 2002. I was pleased to arrive in this community and find that it wasn't fluoridated. I know that my vote would be for no if we were to have another referendum. And I think that it's a great overreach on the part of the Ministry of Health. I leave you with 3 quotes from Measure for Measure, which the Northland Youth Theatre produced a brilliant performance of. The final conclusion was on Saturday. The first is, we have strict statutes and most biting laws. So go to your bosom, knock there, and ask your heart what it doth know. But man, proud man, dressed in a little brief authority, most ignorant of what he's most assured, his glassy essence, like an angry ape, plays such fantastic tricks before high heaven as make the angels weep. My hope is that I can work with you to help find a better solution. Thank you.
Again, members of the public, I do appreciate doing the clapping, but I'm just quite conscious that, again, the noise does go through all the speakers, and actually, and Councillor Peters has reminded me, A common way to do clapping is actually to do the sign language one, which is raising the hands like this. So we don't mind that. Is that I'm just quite conscious of the sound going through the speakers and going through broadcast out. It actually becomes quite loud. So I do just remind that. Deb, appreciate your presentation. There doesn't seem to be any questions, but thank you very much for taking the time to come in. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Our next speaker is Carolyn Bond.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak today. My message is pretty simple. It's basically I do not consent to fluoridation of my water. I pay my water rates and I don't want it. I don't think it is up to one unelected official to make that decision on behalf of everyone in this country. And if you put fluoride in my water, you can send my water rates bill to Ashley to personally pay himself in perpetuity. Now, when the motion was put forward for the Director General to actually make this decision, I made a submission. So I let it be known of my non-consent. I'll read out a little bit of what I put. So I mentioned the fact that it would be allowing the decision to order local authorities to fluoride out our water solely on one unelected official, the Director General of Health. Currently, this issue lies with our council, democratically elected. Water supply paid for through water rates. Public water is by its very name the commons. And having the guardianship of it has to be on behalf of the people and what the people want. Now, I think that's very important if you talk about public water being the commons. The council look after our reserves and our parks, they are the commons, and our water is the commons. There are mechanisms that exist. If people wanted the water fluoridated in Whangarei, there are mechanisms that exist that we could be asking our council to do that. We do not do it. In fact, we do the opposite. We ask that we do not want it. I went on about the science of fluoridation is conflicting and the cost-beneficial ratio questionable. And then I ended with, I do not give permission nor consent for public water to be fluoridated, nor for that decision to be made by the Director General of Health or the district health boards. To do this would be to mass medicate the population. This infringes upon the universal law of free will. So that was what I put in on the 17th of June 1921. Now, I actually have a copy of a letter that I did in 6th of January 2003 when we had the referendum, and I just wrote to council with regards my feelings on that matter. Now, back then, the Ministry of Health actually had a report, and it was mentioned the cost effectiveness of fluoridating water supplies in New Zealand, November 1999. So that was quite interesting. That was the angle of how they were presenting it at that time. So I said the report does not take into account health issues associated with fluoride use. There has been no study done on adult dental benefits, pregnant women, increased hip fractures. This was in the report I'm talking about. Increased osteoporosis, people with chronic disease, kidney ailments, diabetes, babies taking formula made up from fluoridated water, children suffering from malnutrition, or the environmental impact of water fluoridated being flushed into our waterways. I also mentioned the fact that most of New Zealand's population at the time is over 35 years of age, and I believe we should question national health policy decisions when it ignores nearly half of our population. So that was back in 2003. That's 3 times I've given my non-consent. And I think that it comes basically down to that issue.
appreciate your comments there, Carolyn. I appreciate you coming in and speaking. Is there any questions? No, there's no questions. Look, we really do appreciate you coming and taking the time to actually present. It's actually vitally important, and the time that you've spent with doing your submissions, that's great. I think the voice of the people needs to be heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mia Barton Boots.
Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Mia, I'd encourage you to use the microphone, sorry.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. I really do appreciate it. I'd like to keep my time very short. I've already sent what I've written to council so you can read the bits that I may leave out. I want to first of all say how I'm so proud of Laurie for fighting for 50 years and the people before me who spoke so eloquently, and also I don't give my consent either. Now, my reason for not giving consent is because I've got a thyroid problem. I moved to Auckland in 1990, and within 4 years my health just deteriorated. And it was a thyroid issue, which I then didn't discover for another 2 years, and I discovered it. I've put a few things here, like quotes, because I'd like to tell you that the TH values are high with fluoride, that there's studies been done, an Indian study of children between 8 and 15 years, and it demonstrated also significantly higher parathyroid levels, which is also an important part of our whole functioning as a human being. And the thyroid regulates everything, and I can tell you, because it's hair, it's eyes, it's skin, it's bone, it's breathing, it's everything, because they're all the integrines are all interrelated. And so as it's already known, fluoride is an electronegative than iodine, and so it actually replaces that iodine, and that's where the problem happens. It's not just that it goes into your thyroid, that's the part that takes all your iron, most of your, like 90% practically of all your iodine goes in your thyroid. So the thing is that it displaces that iodine, and not only that, it's also, because it's electronegative, it also can bind, I believe, with calcium and magnesium. So who knows what's happening in your system? So it's very important to me on a personal level. There's also further studies about the pineal gland, which sits here, which they don't know much about, to be honest, except that it affects the melatonin levels, and I couldn't sleep. And so it's also contributed negatively to mental health. So we see that increase in society now in mental health. So, and I think a study needs to be done on fluoridated areas, mental health. Fluoride may also have been a factor to all sorts of serious impacts on my life, the further things that I don't know about within my body. So I ask, is fluoridation necessary? I'm so pleased Laurie fought for us for 50 years. And, now they're showing IQ levels, and these are recent studies. They also show, like Laurie said, it's also, and so in my number 4 part says that the recognition of neurotoxic risk is necessary when determining the safety of fluoride in drinking water. And fluoride uses for preventive dentistry purposes. And as Laurie said, it's topical only. It's topical where it has an effect. So you're actually poisoning us. We're actually going to be poisoned, and you don't know. I mean, we don't know what that does to old life and to Alzheimer's and to bone structure and to osteoarthritis and all these things, pretty much because it's electronegative. But I can't speak on that because I'm not. I don't have that. But I can only tell you that what I've read. So I've also put number 5 and number 6 and number 7. They all show really that it is only topical. And so that supports Laurie's statements. And so I won't go over that because I can't, if you're interested, just read my article. Now, and Paul Connett, he's a PhD who taught chemistry, and he actually says, he describes fluoride as a neurotoxicant, and that it should, ring alarm bells. And furthermore, there was a study from Fluoride Action Network, and that it's undisputed that it goes to the placenta. And so clearly, who are we protecting? Not me, not the fetus, not the young, not the under 8-year-olds. So, and they don't have a voice yet. We have to speak for our mokopuna. The point is that we're protecting probably the phosphate industry. And if fluoride does no harm, why aren't they putting it with the NPK fertilisers? Obviously, there's a real reason for that, and we do not know. In light of the above, I believe there's a too great risk to our health, particularly my health, because I'm compromised, and it's simply not necessarily reasonable for fluoride to be in the public water supply, nor do I believe it to be cost-effective for the ratepayer, nor the taxpayer. Pure drinking water is our greatest asset. Why are we going to play with that? How can we promote children to drink water when it may cause harm? And I believe it does. The government and local authorities must protect our water to provide a safe environment. New Health New Zealand Inc. have filed proceedings in High Court yet again, and they want to bring another wave through. So I ask councillors to please hold. Please talk to those other councillors. Please come in and find out what is really the true story and hold from that mandate until that proceeding is fully heard. And that would be one step for mankind in the right direction. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
And Mayor, I thank you for taking your time to come in. I'm just checking around to see if there's any questions. There's no questions here. Mayor, I know you've got a huge support in the audience there as well. So well done for coming in. Well done for expressing your concerns. We do appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you, because it means a lot to me. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Councillors, so that's the last of our public speakers. And again, I do say to the public, thank you for taking time to come in. It is appreciated, every one of you. We'll now just move on to the items. Now, councillors, I'm going to move in block form the minutes of the previous meetings. Sorry? Oh, one at a time. Okay, no, I've been reminded I need one at a time. So I'll move item 5.1, which is the confirmation of the minutes of Thursday, the 22nd of June. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Benny? Oh, we're doing all four? Including the confidential? Yes. Any questions on that? All in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Do I need to do 5.2? Okay. And item 5.2, which is on page 14 or page 17, I'll move that the minutes are true and correct. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Holmes, including the confidential on that one as well. I should have added that. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we're now going to move on to item 6.1, which is on page 22 or page 25 for those who are in the electronic copy. Do I have a mover for item 6.1? Councillor Peters, you'll move it? Sorry? They'll turn the microphone off at that end, it's okay. Just tap it. Cool. So Councillor Peters, you're moving it. Councillor Reid, you're seconding it. Councillor Peters, for the sake of the live streaming, would you like to read out the motion, please?
That the council defers the review in accordance with clause 25(1)(b) of Schedule 1AA of the Local Government Act 2002 as amended by the Water Services Entity Act 2022 of the Stormwater Management Bylaw, Attachment 1, and the Wastewater Bylaw, Attachment 2.
Councillors, we have had meetings and discussions about this. I'm just seeing, is there any questions from the councillors? No? Councillor Peters, did you want to speak to it at all?
Briefly, I agree with the recommendation of staff on this issue.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, very briefly, with the three waters rolling on, this makes sense financially and as a move for us to just see what happens in the future. So I support it.
Councillor, since there's no other discussions or questions on this, and the item has been moved and seconded, all those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now move on to item 6.2, which is on page 52 or 55 for those in the electronic world, which is the new trade waste bylaw. Councillor Cooper is going to move it. Do we have a second? Councillor Golightly is going to second. Councillor Cooper, would you like to read that out?
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of the council, Point 1, the council determines that the Trade Waste Bylaw 2023 included in attachment 1A is the most appropriate form of the bylaw, and B, does not give rise to any implications under and is not inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990. 2, revokes the Trade Waste Bylaw 2012 attachment 2 and replaces it with a Trade Waste Bylaw 2023 attachment 1 with effect from the 4th of August 2023. 3, adopts the Trade Waste Control 2023 attachment 3 in accordance with clause 7.8 of the Trade Waste Bylaw 2023. 4, delegates all its responsibilities, duties and powers under this bylaw to the Chief Executive except for A, the power to set fees, B, the power to make a decision for which a council resolution is required, and C, the power to hear and decide on any appeals. 5, authorises the Chief Executive to make any minor edits or amendments to the Trade Waste Bylaw and Trade Waste Control to correct any spelling or typographical errors and or to reflect in decisions made by Council at this meeting. 6, directs staff to prepare a memorandum to the new water service entity outlining the cultural issues raised by tangata whenua that have not been resolved by the Trade Waste Bylaw and the necessary components to adequately address these issues.
Well read. Councillor Cooper, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. This has not arrived on our agenda today just out of the blue. We have worked through a process, and I would thank the staff for that. A lot of work being done there and consultation. It allows some flexibility for outstanding issues to be resolved and addressed, and I recommend that we take this and move on with the huge workload that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Connor.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm grateful that the point 6 is in that at the very beginning, noting that we have not resolved the issue yet. It's something that I've been wanting to make sure does get resolved, and with appreciation for the time constraints and everything that's happening, it's good that it's there. Is there a possibility that there is something written into the bylaw acknowledging this, or is that not something that we can do? Even just like a note at the front or the back or somewhere just actually acknowledging it.
I will let the staff answer that one. Okay. Councillor Cooper, could you undo your microphone?
Sorry,
Through the chair, thank you, councillor. I don't think it would be appropriate in the bylaw itself as a regulatory document to include that. That is my response. Thank you.
The document is very inclusive the whole way through, and I do know that the staff are still working with tangata whenua and making sure, because of certain rights. So I do know that is still in play and that's still working through. But the process of today is to approve what we've got, and I do expect amendments possibly happen later on. Is that correct?
To the bylaw itself, the idea is that we are here making a bylaw that will have a 5-year lifespan if Three Waters were not to happen, right? But certainly we could make amendments to it in the future. There are also other mechanisms that we could address these issues with outside of this particular bylaw. Yeah.
And I appreciate the team saying that. Thank you very much. Councillor Cooper, would you like to have your right to reply?
No, Your Worship.
Councillors, we've had it been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 6.3, which is on page 146 or 149 for those in the electronic world. And this is review of the designation for emergency management of buildings. Councillor Peters, you'd like to move this? Nice short one. And I actually got Councillor Olsen over there, Councillor Cooper. So Councillor Olsen will second it. Councillor Peters, would you like to read the motion out, please?
Just move this over here. That the council resolves pursuant to S133 BG1 of the Building Act 2004 that the designation put in place on the 15th of February 2023 is still needed for the emergency management of affected buildings.
Councillor Peters, would you like to speak to that, or are you fine?
Briefly. I think this is really important, which is why I'm proposing it, or speaking first to propose it, with the climate occurrences, actions in Whangarei. It isn't just our borders with the sea that are at risk, but all of our buildings, so that we need to, in the future, both look at the way we're building and look at how we care for the buildings we have. And we have been hearing a lot of cases where buildings have not stood up to the cyclone or the other weather events, and there was quite a lot of wind during the weekend. So this is, although it is short, is actually really important and connects to the future strategy that we're going to be talking about later on.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the motion, but I'm also aware of the fact that we are dealing with people's lives here. Either it's a place they reside or buildings that will give them a commercial return. Can we have assurance from the staff, please, that all steps are being taken to resolve matters as quickly as possible so these people can get on with their lives?
Through the chair, yes, but we do need to be cognisant of working with the sensitivities of the situation, but also recognising there is a relationship between people affected and their insurers, and working through those processes that's beyond our control. This is really a classification system that allows us to work through the process efficiently with those who are affected, but recognising that a lot of the work that's being done will be through their insurers and through the remediation of these properties.
Thank you, Dom, for answering that. Any other questions? No. Councillor Peters, would you like your right of reply? Okay. Councillors, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 6.4, and that is on page 148 or 151 of the electronic version. And Councillor Hulse, would you like to move that?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd certainly like to move this, and I'll read the recommendation.
Before you do, Councillor Hulse, I believe Councillor Peters has seconded it.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. The recommendation is the Council adopt either the A, high growth scenario for use of council planning, or B, medium growth scenario for use in council planning, and 2, authorise the Chief Executive to make any necessary drafting, typological or corrections to the final Whangarei District Council Population Projects report. I move option 1, which is A, high growth scenario for use in council planning.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Slightly different to the way I was going to. Hopefully, you were going to read that out, but never mind. That's fine. So So just a clarification here.
Well, we got caught. I thought of this modern building. We actually would have had a slide up showing the recommendation to all the public. So that's the next step, I suppose. So anyway, getting back to why I moved to high growth scenario is for a number of reasons, but I want to highlight 3 options that you can consider in this debate. Way back in the 1950s, we had a population of about 1.5 million people. The government of the day said we've got to do something about infrastructure and power. They committed and built 7 Waikato dams down the Waikato River for power supply. Today, some of the cities turn out, the lights go out when we get a storm now because we haven't got enough power, because no one's followed on at that level. The second one is the Marsden Point Structure Plan, adopted by Council in the year 2000, and that is all the major infrastructure of a major industrial area and major residential area in Marsden Point. Out of that structure plan, we built the Wilson Dam, we upgraded our water treatment plant, we put a new road into the port, an extension of the road. The only new road has actually been built in recent times. And the third one is, the new road to the port is the third one. So you've got the Marsden Point structure plan with a dam in it. We've over recent years gone into a high growth capacity council. So we're classed as a high growth council. If we underinvest now, we don't get to charge the development levies that we require from our developers to actually pay for our infrastructure. If we go in with a low base scenario, we miss out again, so we just build the Joe average this and the Joe average that, instead of building the capacity we need in the growth area. So we need to go out with our eyes wide open and say, we have got growth, we're being real, we're going to project the next generation, we're going to project into the future as far as we can. Development contributions were brought in so people paid their way. And we need to have that capacity in our planning at a sufficient level that's going to make a real difference to getting that funded, instead of having to, every time we get into a major project, we've got to scrape around trying to get a bit here, there and everywhere, and sometimes we come up short. So that's the reason why I made that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Hulse. I think that we've got a warm and welcoming district that will encourage elderly people to come to our area. The resources that we have here are many, and many of them are underdeveloped. And this, looking at it as a high growth area, will encourage us to look at those resources and develop them. We've got potential for electrical generation. We've got potential for the use of our good deep water port, and we've got a really good cadre of bright young people coming through that will work in this area, God willing. So I think that we should look on the positive side about our really, really desirable community and area.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Peters, was that a new word I heard? Cadre? Okay. Councillor Benny.
I think this is really important that we support Councillor Hulse's recommendation. I look at one of the 4.4, the risks of overestimating population growth, and that there is the risk of increased investment in infrastructure sooner than is needed. if anybody thinks that that is a risk, then we need our heads read. So, but I think that the general point is that we need to increase our investment in infrastructure sooner than is needed. This is one way to do it, and I fully support Councillor Hulse's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Hulse, do you want to have a... I'm just checking if there's no other questions. Councillor Reid, you had your hand up for 2 seconds there, but did you change your mind?
Rarely ever change my mind, Your Worship. 100% agree with Councillor Hulse and Councillor Benny. I would rather have roads built and pipe work in the ground before the people get here than after. Thank you.
Mackenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the other speakers have made very valid points, and I would tend to agree. I think actually the report that was done by Infometrics was pretty fascinating. It was very in-depth, looked at all sort of trends and demographic sort of understanding of how our population is moving. I think, honestly, the difference between these two is quite small because it's reviewed every 3 years. So the risk of sort of overcooking things by going for the high growth scenario is minimal. With that beared in mind, I support the motion as put.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora tātou, e te koro matua, tēnā koe. Yeah, I think when we first had this kaupapa put across, I was kind of leaning more towards the medium growth, but understanding the minimum risk between the two, and also because I'm about, kind of the future-proof for our next lot of generations coming. I think it's really important, especially as I think I said at that workshop, our Māori population have a flourishing youth, and so we need, kind of be top of mind on that generation. So therefore, I'm supporting Councillor Hulse. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Harding. And you hit the nail on the head there at that point. We've got a growing population here. I know personally that my predictions are a lot higher than this, than the high one, because I notice on page 149, it actually has a graph there which shows that the high growth population being 142 by the year 2052. My calculation showing by our existing growth pattern that we're presently growing at, if we kept growing at that same pattern, would be at 200,000 people. So be well aware that even a high growth may not be exactly dealing with the high growth that we're actually having. So, Councillor Hulse, you'd like your right of reply?
Yes, Your Worship. Just mainly to say that we need to do this now going into the long-term plan. And Council will have plenty of opportunity to debate items by items as it comes through. But the general theme we should set now, so we're really confident we're going to go out and set our district up to be really, really future-proofed. Thank you.
Councillors, the right of reply being has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now going to move on to item 6.5. It's on page 190 or page 193, and Councillor Benny has his hand up to move this one. Councillor Benny, you ready to read the whole motion?
Second it.
And Councillor Golightly is going to second it.
The recommendation is that the Council, 1, approve the additional unbudgeted funding of $57,000 to the Event Development Fund to support the International Women's Boxing and Whangarei Maritime Festival planned for the district in the 2023-24 financial year. 2, note the intended change in approach to the Christmas program of events. Right. Firstly, the Whangarei Event Development Fund is set up for us to attract international and national events to this region. Firstly, I just want to give a big thanks to Bea and her team, Victoria, led by Victoria, at Venue and Events, for the calibre of the events that we are attracting and the work that they have done in getting them here. The events themselves, firstly is the boxing fight. For the first time ever in our region, we have 2 world champion boxers currently ready to go. On the 2nd of December, we are bidding to have them fighting up here. Both these girls are wahinis who have a really interesting story to tell. They're both from up here. This will bring huge international and national media to our attention. This is a really good investment in a very good product. The maritime proposal fits in nicely with our region, and these are two really good events that I urge you to support. The problem being is the funding for the Christmas parades, but our GM has managed to find another avenue for funding for that, and I'm comfortable that with Councillor Peters as well looking for funding in that. She's a little whiz at that stuff. I'm comfortable that'll go. So I urge everybody to support this. I think this is a huge event for our region and a huge event for our wahine.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor Connor.
Thank you. First, I'd just like a couple of questions, if I may. In regards to the option that we have going forward on this one, the options on page 192 or 195 electronically expand on that slightly. On the next page down, is it the next page? No, sorry, page back up. It does say that the Christmas parade events are going to be managed by a Christmas event fund, but in the options below, it says there will be no funding for the 3 events. So technically, does that mean that there's no funding within this here, but there is funding in another form? Because that's what I need to clarify, please.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There was a lot of discussion in the way that this agenda was actually written, and I do appreciate your comment. I know that Victoria has an answer for this. Would you like to answer the councillor on that one?
Yeah, through the chair. So yes, you're correct, and sorry for any confusion it caused. So from the Event Development Fund, there wouldn't be the funding available for those 3 Christmas parades. And we wanted council to note that to be able to fund the 3 Christmas parades, we'd have to use the Christmas Fund, which means that the delivery of what we normally do for Christmas events would need to change to allow for that funding. So as we've shuffled around some of the events into different funds. So the changes for the Christmas Festival would be that the delivery in the same way that we've just done Matariki, which would be supporting communities to deliver those events rather than having one large council Christmas event. So that would be the change to allow for the spread of the funds across multiple community events. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
It does, yeah. No, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify because especially with the Hikarangi and Waipu ones, which are further out, I'd hate to see them missing out, let alone the stuff. I will talk to it just now. I'll just say it's great to see these events coming into Whangarei, as well as being able to continue to support these, as well as going into the Puanga Matariki festival that we've had just recently. It's been spectacular. I'm grateful that we're able to host these events still and support the community through their endeavors to be able to do so too. So I'm hoping that there is no confusion then that this does not remove any funding, but it just changes it slightly, and a different event works with it. But no, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I also wish to endorse the work of Bea and Victoria in managing our events. It makes Whangarei a vibrant place. I think this proposal is good, and I've already started searching for extra funding in case you need it, but I do think that Councillor Benny is right. This is a big opportunity for us to show how good we are at hosting and doing events on a world stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. I just to remind you, we did have the Rugby World Cup up here as well, which we showed very well on that. But anyway, Councillor Roka.
Tēnā koe te koro matua. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Worship. Sorry. I just wanted to back the sentiments of Councillor Benny. This event is a. I love the message that it sends our rangatahi here in Te Tai Tokerau. I love the message that it sends to our young people, our young wahine, our rangatahi, that it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter who you are or anything like that, the neighbourhood you grew up in, you can be a world champ anywhere. So no matter the upbringing, you can be a world champ. So I love the message that it sends to our tamariki, bringing this event to Te Tai Tokerau, and then being able to see people who look like them and talk like them and grew up in the same neighbourhoods as them be world champions, televised on Sky Sport and doing all of those amazing things. So 100% tautoko, this amazing event, above and beyond, I guess, the economic benefits that international events like this bring. And then also just all the amazing events that have been going, like last night with the Northern Kahu event, the basketball that played last night. Shout out to Northern Kahu who beat the Pokai last night. So just heaps of amazing events that are taken off. So shout out to all the staff who are doing the mahi behind the scenes to get that happening. But tautoko this, I think it's an amazing message to our rangatahi here in Te Tai Tokerau. So kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Roka. And Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I absolutely support the boxing competitions that are coming up, and for the very reasons that Councillor Roka has just said. I wanted to have a say for a question to clarify I'm quite happy with the community organising their own Christmas parades, but will the cash be there for them to spend, or are they going to have to raise that cash themselves?
So we would like to walk alongside community. Communities have already been holding Christmas events for some time, so there is already budgets within community to do so. However, things have become more expensive. So we'd like to support them to continue the fantastic work that they do out there for Christmas, as well as spread that love across the city and district. There is a fund within council, our Christmas fund, which will enable that to happen.
Okay. I'm not sure what I'm going to take you at face value there, V, and thank you very much. But let me tell you that if there isn't the money there for traffic management, which is really the only thing, then I'll have to take my little woolen waistcoat off and become a boxer myself, because we'll have loads of trouble. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Now, Councillor Comp, you've got another question?
I have just one more question. Have we had any changes yet to the way we run events and around the place due to the fact that there is a lot of people coming into the area, they bring a lot of rubbish and leave a lot of rubbish around the outsides of these spaces, and parking over footpaths is still an issue?
I think the question Councillor Connop's asking, if I can rephrase that for the staff, is are we working, at the present moment, working very closely with the different community events that are happening to try and reduce a lot of the waste and bad behaviours that some of our community are having?
Through the chair. So what we have done is we work alongside community through sponsorship and sponsoring them. Something that is written within the sponsorship is that they must consider waste management. We support them with building a plan around waste management and what that looks like, and we expect a report to come from that, which actually tells us what we're diverting from landfill. At the moment, we don't know what we don't know with events. So this project is about having a really good look at events over the next 2 years and understanding what we are actually diverting and how we can make better choices and more informed choices on how we manage waste. In one instance, we've also supported community by installing, and through other parts of council, installing waste, it's not recycling, for food products, so that it can actually be composted through events. So that's another side project that we're also monitoring and how that happens. Car parking is always going to be an issue. However, our Parks Department have done some fantastic leaps and bounds with Puhi Island and the amounts of car parks that are available for events around those areas. And I'm sure the team are looking at that across the board.
That didn't answer my question, but I appreciate what you just said. I'm more meaning like when people come to the stadium, when everybody walks to the stadium, and the amount of rubbish that is left outside the stadium, whilst we have these designations on the internal and very close to the spaces that people are coming to, we don't consider the wider reach. So, for example, from the Okara Stadium, from the bridge and across, there are cans and bottles littered along there frequently, but we do not pick them up with our events or how they're hosted. So I think we need to improve on that. I'll leave it at that for now, but I appreciate the responses and appreciate the efforts that you are going to support the community.
I'll just clarify there. When it comes to a stadium event, that's not part of the team's events. That's part of the stadium. And you are right, Councillor Conniff, in relation to some of the waste that's been put around. I know the team are working with the community. They are trying to get things better. It has been better, and we are getting better as well. So I know the team are working on it. Councillor Olsen.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, team, for all your hard work and the effort that goes in. I just on a lesser level, I'm glad to see that the Silver Festival has financial backing again. That was really successful last year. So for our with regards to the Positive Ageing Committee, I think that's really great, and I'm very pleased to see it. And I generally support all of this proposal because, I mean, anything that will bring economical growth into the district needs to be supported. So, yeah, well done and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Te Koro Matua. A tēnā kaurua, aku mihi nui kia kaurua mō tō mahi. I am just really thankful of the approach and the way in which you've looked at this kaupapa and found some really diverse ways of managing everything. We know you are all under the pump in terms of budgets and resources. So I've really appreciated the way that you've come through and looked at this. You know, we've all been really 100% keen to have this event, international event, along with all the other events, as Councillor Olsen has talked about, and the Maritime Festival. So we're always after a win-win. Just a question around the external funding, is that being sought to cover the unbudgeted amount or the further community Christmas activities? Kia ora.
Through the chair, so that will be to help support the unbudgeted spend for these two new events that, if they're supported and approved by council. The Christmas events will be covered by moving them into the Christmas fund anyway. And yeah, that just means a change in the delivery of the Christmas event from council. So really the external funding is to support the unbudgeted spend.
Kapai, thanks very much. Thanks for clarifying that. Kia ora.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just fully support the bringing of events to our town. I think it's a really great idea and well done to the team. I know you work extremely hard on these. It is an unbudgeted expense and we do have little issues around the place, and I agree with Councillor Conniff, it does look like a pig pen outside that stadium on occasions, but that's not reflecting back on our teams. That's the general public. What I will do is add an itch on the end of my name, seeing as how the finance chair is not here, and just put a word of warning out there. For every time we make an unbudgeted expense, something somewhere has got to pay. So just bear that in mind as we go through our day.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to move on and just make a comment on the Black Ball Yacht Club application here for funding. You know, who are they and what they do? This is quite a unique group of persons who got together, formed by international people. People have brought the yachts into the town basin, and David Irvin's over there in the crowd and in the gallery. But I just want to recognise his efforts in the group of the international yachties, when particularly through COVID and etc. This group was largely responsible for setting up a network amongst all the international yachties when our staff weren't able to go to work because of the COVID restrictions. Out of that, one of the big events, and I've probably led on to this Black Ball Yacht Club, was they actually found out amongst themselves they had a band. Everyone played different musical instruments. So they went along to the Canterbury Bridge one day and put on a whole show for the public. And it kind of lifted the morale of everyone. You know, like here's a group of people thought they got out of the talents, they put it to good use. But that's what we need to encourage. We've got communities within communities. And I'd like to say I fully support what they're doing here because they're reaching out further And we've got a great marine activities in Whangarei, and we're just promoting it. But for all the overseas, David and you, the overseas yachtsmen who come into our area, I just want to thank them for how they engage with the public and become part of our community. Just thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holt, and thank you for reminding us all of that. That's very important. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'm a big fan of boxing and also a big fan of sea shanties, so definitely in support of both of these. Thanks.
Councillor Holmes.
Just to support what Councillor Holser just said, as your previous life with Coast Guard, just great to see the Maritime Festival come in here as well. So we've focused on the boxing, which I support, but support both of these events. So again, great work for the team. And just a final question is to His Worship: is there any truth in the rumour that you'll be appearing on the support card for the boxing as the Italian stallion?
Thank you, Councillor Holmes, on that one. No, I think there is no truth in that rumour, but thank you very much for trying to put me in the spot there. The item has been moved in second. Councillor Benny, would you like your right of reply?
I hadn't intended to take a right of reply, but I'm just hearing Councillor Cooper offer to put the gloves on, and hearing that, I'm willing to put myself forward to take you both on as a pre-match.
Okay, so now we've had the move. There's been right of reply. It's been moved in second. All those in favour? Any opposed? Thank you, councillors, and thank you, team. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 6.6, which is on page 290 or 293 in the electronic world. This is the statement of proposal for transfer of the independent qualified persons IQPs registered to Auckland Council. Councillor Olsen, you're moving, and Councillor Peters, are you seconding? Are that okay? Councillor Olsen, I'd like to read it out for everybody.
The recommendations are that the Council, 1, adopts the statement of proposal, which is subject to S83, the Special Consultative Procedure Process under Local Government Act 2002. 2, resolves to seek public submissions on the proposal in accordance with the Special Consultative Procedure Process. And 3, authorises the Chief Executive to make any necessary changes to the attached statement of proposal and finalise the document for consultation. So, yes, I would like to speak to it. So initially when this was brought to Council, I was actually a little bit hesitant about this, but I do have a couple of concerns. One is that we're going to transfer this process to Auckland Council and be under their jurisdiction. So I do have issues around they will be able to set the fees, which, and we all know that Auckland is expensive. Will this put the fees out of reach for us as a lower socioeconomic community? So that's really my main concern. I understand that it will lessen, will take some workload off Whangarei, but yeah, it's just my concerns around Auckland having control over this IQP. I have spoken to a number of practitioners, and they seem to be in support of this. So if you can allay my fears around setting of the fees, then yes, I would support this proposal.
So through the chair, yes, I can allay your fears. So currently Auckland's process is a 3-yearly registration. So they have a $400 3-yearly fee. They've got established processes, and largely the reason we're doing this is around mitigating risk, but also their fees over the 3 years would be cheaper than ours. So their initial setup is $400. Ours over 3 years has an initial establishment fee plus an annual fee, which would work out at $797 under current fees. The other point to note is that 58 of our 160 IQPs are currently registered in both Auckland and Whangarei District. So for those IQPs, they'll be now paying one set of fees to Auckland Council versus the 2 sets they're currently paying. So it's more efficient in that regard.
Thank you, Dom.
Councillor Peters, you got a question?
Thank you. I think this is a good move, Your Worship, because it both shows us collaborating with a wider authority, saving money and saving staff time, which is precious.
Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, the same for me. So through the chair, just I support this. I don't think there's anything to fear from this. It seems to be a smart use of resources, and collaboration is the way to go. There's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. So I think this is a very smart way forward. I support it. Thank you.
Now, I just remind the councillors again, the item is actually to go out for submissions, public submissions. It's not actually to do the transfer at this present moment. So I just need to remind councillors, this is just going out for public submissions. No other comments? No? Okay, Councillor Olsen, you want no reply? Okay, councillors, just remind you, they're the items that are there. All in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we're now just going to move on to item 7.1, which is on page 304 or 307 in the electronic world. And I'll just move this to explain the situation at the same time. There was, so this is, I'll move that the council notes the correction in the minutes of the meeting of the Whangarei District Council held on 22nd of September 2022 as follows. Item 6.2, Airport Noise Management Committee recommendations, and it's point 5 there, which confirm council support in principle. The words are highlighted there, and in principle, the relocation of Nest from Kensington Park to the Whangarei District Airport. Councillor Conant seconding it, and I know Councillor Reid would like to speak to it.
No, I was seconding.
Oh, sorry, you were seconding it. My apologies. Okay. Okay. So I'll just explain the situation there. As most councillors understand by reading the agenda, the original item, which was actually worded, missed out the words in principle. And our council staff have actually gone through and checked the records, and it was actually stated in principle, and Councillor Hulse was quite clear on making sure it was stated in principle. So we just had to correct our minutes, and this is the official way of correcting our minutes. Any other questions on that? No? Excellent. Okay, the item has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Now, councillors, we've got one other item here which has been brought forward, and it's been pulled out of confidential. This is item 110, which is to do with the future development strategy for urban development. It is being distributed at this present moment. Do we need to move that to be taken out of confidential? Okay. And councillors, I'm actually moving the motion here so that you understand the whole situation. So this is the Future Development Strategy Governance Arrangement. So the item as stated there is, recommendations are that Council establish the Whangarei Future Development Strategy Working Group with terms of reference outlined in Attachment 1 and comprised of 4 local government members comprising of 2 Whangarei District Council representatives to be appointed by the Whangarei District Council, 2 Northern Regional Council representatives to be appointed by Northern Regional Council, 4 tangata whenua members, 2 to be nominated by the Māori Caucus of the Tikareria Strategic Partnership Committee to be appointed by the Whangarei District Council, and 2 members who can represent Whangarei District, catch the words, represent Whangarei District, to be nominated by the Māori Caucus of, I think it's called TMAC, but this is TMAC, and Council Working Party, and appointed by Northern Regional Council. 2, approves the terms of reference for the Whangarei Future Development Strategy Working Group. 3, appoints Councillor Cooper and Councillor McKenzie to serve as the Whangarei District Council representatives on the working group. 4, authorise the Chief Executive to formally invite Northern Regional Council to participate in the Future Development Strategy Working Group. 5, notes that the Whangarei District Council and Northern Regional Council will each need to formally adopt the Future Development Strategy. 6, agrees that the report, excluding any commercially sensitive information, attachment That one we don't need anymore. Sorry, my apologies about that. So 6 will actually be agrees that staff actively seek any available external funding for the Future Development Strategy, or FDS, Urban Development Project. So I have moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harding did the seconding on that one. Sorry, Councillor Peters. So, councillors, I'll just, this is a long time being the process of trying to get the wording correctly and making sure that we've all tidied things up. And as you councillors can see, one of the items in there talked about the cost that this could bring to council, or costs that it could cause to council. Hence the reason why the last point on there, which agrees that staff actively seek available external funding. We have a situation where the Ministry of Environment have actually realised that Whangarei is in a different situation. And they have realised that this can possibly cause a lot of costs to the ratepayers of Whangarei, and being in the time that we are with the storms, they have acknowledged that situation. So there may be funding coming up shortly to cover these costs. So these are things that we're working on. I have been in many phone call conversations yesterday, as long with email conversations, to try and get the message across. So they do understand our situation. We are very different, and hence the reason why I'm moving that motion was that. Councillor Harding, you seconded it, which is great. Anyone would like to speak to that? Councillor Hulse, I see you first.
Just a short one, Your Worship. In the funding model of this, it's a bit scary because there's a whole range of prices in the agenda. There's quite a common theme now to say Whangarei District Council ratepayers will pay this and the NRC ratepayers will pay that. Well, most of them are the same ratepayers. And so we've got to be very careful there's not a growth upon growth in costs. And we've got to go back to our ratepayer base all the time to say, are we getting value for each resident's ratepayer's dollar? If we go back to that and build up from there, and just keep in mind all the time that those ratepayers are the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think this is an essential cornerstone piece of work, which will speak to and influence other strategy pieces that are coming our way. So I'm really pleased to see it come to council and to be tabled. And I strongly support the 2 nominations there of Councillor Cooper, Councillor Mackenzie. I think it follows very clearly their existing responsibilities. So they seem a very good fit, and they get my full support. So I think this is a great move. I am cognizant of what Councillor Hull says about everything comes at a cost. I appreciate that. But this is a statutory requirement. We have no option other than to do it. And time is tight. So I think it's really positive that we're moving on this now, and I would fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse, for highlighting that, yes, this is a statutory requirement which has been put down by legislation that we must achieve. So, yes, good pointing on that. Councillor Peters.
Thank you to the strategy team for the quickness with which they have addressed this issue. And I also think that this is absolutely essential for us. We have to look further ahead than our current 3 years of term and plan accordingly. So it's really important that that is done. I also thank His Worship for looking for extra funding, and I'm sure it will. It may pop out of the woodwork. So thank you very much.
Councillor Roka.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to support the motion and support Councillor Cooper and Councillor Mackenzie in the motion. How appropriate that we have 2 different walks of life. Not that spread apart, Councillor Cooper. Represented in our future planning team.
One old and one young.
Well, that's. I was trying to say it nicely. But I, with all the negativity going around with the narrative around co-governance and the way, that narrative that that made-up narrative. I'm happy for us to be a good example of what it can look like with a great partnership between Māori, with the representatives of Te Kārearea and the Māori caucus, a part of this working team, as well as our Te Kārearea committee, and how much beautiful mahi can come from a great partnership between council, between government and Māori when they work well together. So highly support the motion, support the team, support Councillor Cooper, and support Councillor McKenzie. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Luka. Councillor Connop.
What he said. But no, can I just get clarification for this, please? As you read out a different agenda piece that was than the one we've had in the yellow documents, can we get that emailed to us, or can you read out the changes again, please, to the bottom? Because the last sentence you said before doesn't correlate to this.
So just to clarify, the only item, there was an item which was on the confidential which can come off because it's been brought into the open. So hence the reason why the only item 6 now becomes agrees that staff actively seek any available external funding for the FDS UD or Future Development Strategy Urban Development Project.
You say that again, please?
Agrees that the staff actively seek any available external funding for the Future Development Strategy, or FDS, Urban Development, or UD, project.
Cool. Yeah, that's the confusion I had when you mentioned it before, and I was like, that's not there, and I don't have that. But no, thank you very much. Cheers.
Councillor Cooper, would you like your comment on what was said over the side here?
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. This is a big body of work, and the council is yet to vote on it. There has been some support expressed for Councillor McKenzie and myself, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the fact, Your Worship, the leadership that you showed in acknowledging that this body of work is very important for the council, and I agree with you, so thank you very much. As the senior of those two councillors, it would appear, I think I might speak on behalf of Councillor McKenzie, just to keep things moving. So thank you very much. We take on board the seriousness of the funding situation that our council is finding itself in, and really will have that in the front of our mind. So thank you.
Cool. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very grateful to be put forward for this appointment. Councillor Cooper is the chair of the Strategy Planning and Development Committee, and I'm the deputy chair. And this particular piece of work ties into that kaupapa quite closely. So I think it suits, and I think I'm very grateful for everyone's support and being put forward. I think the way it's landed, because of the change in interpretation of having to be adopted by NRC as well, is actually a really good governance structure. So it's a working group instead of a group that would have delegated powers, as was previously considered. So I think that's really good in that we get to do some really good work. It makes the staff's time more efficient use of their time, because they don't have to report to several different groups independently. So there's an efficiency there. And ultimately, any decision is brought back to the full council to be made. So there's that scrutiny, which I think is really important. I think as a piece of work, it's a really important thing. It's looking ahead for 30 years. It's about accommodating urban growth. It's going to inform our district plan zoning, ensure that we have a well-functioning urban environment, all things that I care about really deeply. So very privileged to be put forward for this. In terms of the budget, I acknowledge it does cost money to do this. Also, just worth noting that the current figure is $318,000 when other councils are looking at a sort of $2 million bill. And that has been budgeted for within the annual plan. So while I appreciate that it's always good to look outside for external funding, if at all possible, this is something that we have to do. It's a statutory obligation. So we will be doing it regardless. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Look, I'll just have my right of reply. Just to highlight on a couple of things, is that probably the most important thing is the staff are looking for actively to try and find fundings where they can. And a lot of the processes that they're doing are actually part of their natural process at the moment, done by different departments. So it's collating those. I am quite conscious, and I have been actively trying to get out there and find extra funding, because I am quite conscious that through the consultation process, that can start racking up costs. And that's the bit I'm really concerned by, because I know that good consultation costs money. And that's why I always say we need, if we can have central government come to the party, that will be very appreciated at this present moment in time. I'm having my right of reply, Councillor Mackenzie. And so I'm just making that very conscious to everybody on that. Councillors, I've had the right of reply. All those in favour? Any opposed? Councillor Reid. Would you like that noted, Councillor Reid? Okay. And Councillor Olsen abstains. It's been carried. Thank you, councillors. At this present moment, I'm going to give you a 10-minute break so that you can stand up, and we will have... before we do that, sorry, councillors, I need to move us... Oh. So, councillors, sorry, before we stand up, I need to just cover off the extraordinary business here. Councillor Benny. Yeah. Subsequent to the agenda being circulated, confidential item 1.11, inner city development future terms, was distributed separately but not within the time frame specified in Lagoima. The report was not included in the agenda for the reason that negotiations were still ongoing at the time of the agenda closure. Council are asked to consider this matter today in today's meeting to enable negotiations to continue without undue delay. I will move that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hulse seconds that. Again, it's just for extra business. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Now, councillors, we're just going to move into confidential. And you'll get just a 10-minute break while we go into confidential. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Do we have I'll move that. Seconder? Councillor Holmes will second it. Great. All in favour? Thank you, councillors.